say the right things on the right side and the wrong things on the wrong side.
Cosine equals 87 divided by 105, the square root of 105.
I mean, I can't always be their little girl.
Oh, don't be a bad girlie.
The toddler wobbles into the larger world, developing the skills needed for a growing independence. Their relationships also become more complex, especially in non-traditional family settings. On the weekends, Ariel is looked after by her father. But Ariel's primary caregiver is her grandfather.
That little girl grew up here. In other words, that's the only house she's ever known, the only home. Because when Cheryl had her, she was living here. And the baby, when she came out of the hospital, she came to stay here. So she grew up here, and she got attached to me, and I got attached to her. I took over. I took her for her baptism.
More.
I baptized her. And you know, I'm her godfather. At the beginning, when Cheryl first left, she used to wake up at night and holler she wanted her mama, or get up in the morning because she used to sleep with her. And seeing that she wasn't there, she'd wake up, Mommy, my mommy, where's my mommy? And we'd tell her, oh, she went to the store, or she went someplace, you know. Like right now, she says her mother's in the hospital. And she goes to see her mother in the hospital.
In reality, Ariel's mother, Cheryl, lives in the Sybil Brand Institute for Women, a medium security prison.
Every developmental period provides an opportunity for developmental change. So if it happens that an infant had not been securely attached and now enters the toddler period, if the parents are supportive and available to the child at that time and are clear and firm in setting the limits and providing guidelines, in other words, basically meeting the toddler's needs for secure autonomy, then that can turn around what started out as a difficult process.
The happier we are as adult parents, the better we're going to do in parenting.
Cheryl is one of a group of mothers trying to reestablish a secure bond with their children. They are aided by a special parenting class taught at the correctional facility.
What I do here at jail is considered high-risk parenting because I have parents who haven't gone through the developmental stages themselves. They themselves haven't achieved even, many of them, the first stage of development, which is the stage of trust. And once you lose trust in yourself and your capabilities, you don't move into autonomy yourself.
One of the challenges to every parent is, what can I do to help my child develop into a happy, secure, social, friendly person who can succeed in the complex world of people, relationships, and events that they're going to encounter. The most important thing is to be emotionally available to your child, to know your child as an individual, to accept that child's emotions and feelings. It's no good to say, don't be sad, don't be angry. Children have those feelings. They need to be acknowledged. At the same time, children, especially in the toddler years, have the need to say, no, mine, keep, me, and stand up for themselves. Parents are often inclined to sort of push an adult agenda on this toddler. No, you need to share. No, you just can't have things your way. The truth of the matter is, supporting the child's will toward autonomy and will toward independence is a way to get what you want as well as what the child wants.
While I was pregnant with Ariel, I was thinking that I would give her everything that I didn't have. That I was going to be the best mother, you know, do things for her that my mother didn't do for me, to be her friend mostly. I always thought I was a good mother, but now I know I could have been a better one, and I will be a better one. The neatest thing that I've gotten out of the parenting classes is how to discipline a child. I was never disciplined as a child, and therefore it's hard for me to discipline my daughter.
The job of the parents changes in the toddler period. They still have to provide a source of comfort and reassurance for the child, but now they're called upon to provide more limits and boundaries for the child's behavior. Since the toddler can get into things, that means they can get into trouble. Since the toddler can understand that you don't want them to do something, that means they can be defiant and there can be a conflict of wills. So the parent has to both be a source of reassurance and a source of firm limit setting and control. One reason the limit setting and control is so important for the child is because if those limits and controls are there, the child can feel safe and can have a certain knowledge that they won't be allowed to do things that are beyond what they can handle.
The first time Ariel came, she was scared. And she looked at me because it was a strange place. It's getting me sentimental. But she looked at me and she was just looking at me, and I asked her, I said, Ariel, are you scared? And she said, yes. So it was like real scary the first time. But after that, she's been okay. She likes little toddlers who like talking on the phone, and here they get to talk on the phone. And if I have lipstick on, I'll kiss the mirror, and she'll see my lips on the mirror, on the window, and it's really neat.
Researchers consider such experiences an indication of the toddler's developing sense of self.
If you put some rouge on a child's nose and brought it to a mirror, it would now touch its nose, while a 12-month-old would not. Well, why would it touch its nose? It must recognize that the reflection in the mirror belongs to him or her. I decided it would be interesting to study longitudinally a small group of children in the second year of life, follow them very closely and very intensively to see whether there was a universal emergence of certain qualities. And what we saw, of course, had been seen by 19th century observers like Pryor. We saw that in the middle of the second year, a correlated set of phenomena occurred. The child would now begin to become anxious if a test was hard. Well, why should they? Well, if they were aware that that was a difficult item, and notice the language I'm using, and were aware that they could not do it. That's self-awareness.
The charge they have me here is drunk driving, which happened 3 years ago. I've had this warrant for 3 years. My daughter, she had nothing to do with what I did, and here she is suffering for something that I did so long ago. Me and her had a really, really good relationship where we were never separated. And for about a week while I was in here, I couldn't sleep at night because me and her always slept together.
Thanks to the parenting program, Cheryl and other mothers at Sybil Brand can now see and touch their children every week.
After not seeing your daughter so long and then be able to see her, just the joy and the love and the caring you feel for your children all come back. Can mommy kiss you?
What the toddler really wants to say is, I am capable of standing on my own. I am capable of being separate. I am a freestanding individual with an autonomous agency to do things. You need to know that. You need to respect that. And the intriguing thing is, if you do, a toddler's fascinatingly cooperative and willing to go along. Toddlers often get a bad rap of being uncooperative, and we label the period the terrible twos, but the fact of the matter is, they spend far more time being cooperative. It's just that they also spend some time asserting themselves and saying, here I am, I will be myself. There is a self to stand up and be noted.
For some children, the toddler period is a very difficult one. The child becomes very tantrumy, negativistic, and poses great challenges to parents. Fusses a lot, cries a lot, is demanding, and so forth. There is a link between attachment history and this kind of behavior pattern. Infants that were anxious in their attachment often become tantrumy, difficult toddlers. It's of course possible for parents to turn this around by being more consistent and clear and firm and supportive in the toddler period. And together, the two can weather that storm and the child can get back on track and develop well.
When Ariel was a baby, I've always hugged and kissed her because I think that was left out in my childhood, was, you know, real love. I knew my parents loved me, but I don't think they showed it to me as much. So that's why I want to emphasize that with my daughter.
Even with the best intentions, reestablishing a bond of trust with a toddler is not easy. Ariel, her mother, and her grandfather must all face profound feelings of separation and loss.
Toddlers grieve, and they're grieving for the mother who isn't there, the father who isn't there, the relationship that isn't there any longer. And of course, many of them are caught in that first stage of grief, and that's anger.
Put the soap up there with your hands. Brush your neck with your hands.
There's parts of her life that I'm just going to miss. Like if she was younger and she wasn't crawling yet, I'd miss her first walk. There's always something that I'm going to miss that she'll never do again for the first time.
I'm 71 years old now, so hopefully I can see her grow up till she's about, well, maybe 10. But then, from then on, God knows.
I've got all your things.
I know after this separation from my daughter, I hope to God I am never separated from her again. She's just been an inspiration to me. The charge that I'm on here now happened before she was here. And since she's been in my life, I haven't been in any trouble. She's changed my life. I have something to live for.
The emerging independence of the toddler does not diminish the importance of the established relationship with the primary caregiver. In fact, the quality of that relationship may be even more important in toddlerhood.
Many children approach the issues of the toddler period armed with a secure attachment history. That is, with an experience of the parent being reliable, responsive, available to them. The advantage that this gives the child is that, first of all, when the parent sets a limit, the child will tend to accept and believe in that limit. After all, you've been consistent and responsive before. Probably you can be counted on to do what you say now. Secondly, if the child has the history of secure attachment, they're comfortable with the idea that even as they get away from the parent, they could always come back because they have this history of knowing whatever the stress, whatever the distance, if I need you, you'll be there for me.
But what about children whose parents are not always available, either physically or emotionally? Dr. Mary Ainsworth, a pioneer researcher into parent-child relationships, developed a laboratory test for analyzing and measuring attachment in infants she called the strange situation.
Well, the strange situation was originally designed to answer a normative question about development. It was quite clear that we had very important data about individual differences.
Ainsworth noted that some children in a non-familiar or strange environment use their mother as a secure base to explore and interact with the world. They are not unduly disturbed when a stranger comes into the room. Exploration continues as baby keeps a watchful eye on the stranger. When the mother leaves, these securely attached children often become distressed. However, they quickly settle down upon the mother's return.
The cardinal characteristic of the mothers of securely attached babies was what I call sensitive responsiveness to infant signals.
Ainsworth also noted two patterns of insecure attachment. Anxious, resistant children are wary of new situations, cling to the mother, and fuss even before the stranger enters. When the mother returns, these infants continue to fret for some time. Anxious, avoidant children, on the other hand, are unfazed by the stranger, often readily separate from the mother, but surprisingly actively avoid her when she returns.
The mothers of insecure infants were all insensitive, and we had a scale of sensitivity and sensitivity, and they were clearly all in the lower half of that rating.
While the strange situation revealed individual differences in the children under study, not all agree on whether the experiment applies to children in all circumstances. Children, for instance, whose mothers work full-time often display what some interpret as avoidant behavior. Are these children insecurely attached?
The question about Ainsworth's strange situation as an assessment of attachment for children whose mothers are working is whether it has the same kind of psychological significance for children who've had these out-of-the-home experiences. It may turn out that it's a completely valid assessment, but the classification that shows that children who are insecurely attached and avoid their mothers is based on those children having been in some ways rejected by their mothers. Their mothers actually rebuff them. They're not as sensitive and responsive. But the problem is that it's based on brief separations of children from their mothers or their fathers. And so one of the things that we're doing here now is to try and think of other ways of assessing this attachment relationship.
Stewart and her associates adapted the strange situation experiment to create a psychologically comparable circumstance for children who are already adapted to long separations from parents. At no point in the experiment did the parent leave the room, and mildly stressful events were introduced one at a time.
It's okay. It's a little robot toy. And making smoke, though.
The robot tests how disturbed the child will become and how easily the parent can then comfort the child. In the next task, the child plays with some toys. The mother then takes the toys away and puts them inside a plexiglass box and locks it.
Our effort with this task is to see whether this child will be able to negotiate with his mother to get the box opened. And so we're able to see whether children are as likely to use their mothers as a resource to get what it is that they want. The reason that we're using this plexiglass box is that we think that children who actually have been rejected by their mothers will be less likely to go to them to try and get help. So this is a way that children whose mothers are working or not working would be exactly comparable in this situation.
In another task, a remote-controlled hovercraft hidden in a box starts making a loud noise. The parents attempt to get their child to come and open the box with them.
Come on, stick it out the box. Will Mommy touch it? It won't hurt you.
So it's a cooperative task where they have to trust the mother, that the child knows that the mother wouldn't let anything bad happen. And so they're willing to go, even though there's this horrible noise inside this box and you don't know what it is. The children, again, who have good relationships with their mothers, we think, should be more likely to go into, as intrepid little explorers, into this new situation because they have their mother at their side.
In the final task, a strangely dressed person attempts to interact with the child.
We see, first of all, how the child reacts to this unusual experience. Does the child go to the mother for security? And then, can this person draw the child away from the mother to engage in some play?
Hey, Robert, you want to play with me? Huh? You want to play with me?
We're hoping that children who have secure relations with their mothers will be able to go to the mother for reassurance, and then leave the mother to play with the wizard.
In these experiments, Stewart and her associates are attempting to further understand the nature of attachment.
It's possible that there are two kinds of avoidant behavior that children would display in the strange situation. There's the kind of avoidance that is a product of having been rejected by your mother, which is true psychological avoidance and insecure attachment. It's also possible that something that looks like avoidance is really just ignoring the mother and not rejecting the mother, and that the children who have had more experience being apart from the mother might not be as likely to go to her in this situation.
Though these experiments are not complete, they suggest that out-of-home care may not necessarily be harmful to a young child's emotional growth, as some have feared. Still, enough troubling data emerges to cause concern. Can daycare be detrimental to healthy development?
To ask whether daycare itself is good or bad is, again, too simple a question. And it's not that, that all daycare is going to have benefits or detriments to children's development. It depends on the specific program that the child is in.
We know very clearly that when conditions of quality exist, the children thrive in non-parental child care arrangements. By conditions of quality, I mean well-trained caregivers who are sensitive to the individual needs of children, groups that aren't too big, not too many children per caregiver, and stable relationships in which caregivers aren't turning over. We know that. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that those high-quality conditions are not representative of what American child care is. As I look at the evidence that's accumulated over the last 20 years, what I see is steady indication that under the conditions of American care as we know it and have it, which is poor and limited, that our youngest citizens who are in non-parental care, our babies, for more than 20 to 30 hours a week, are at increased risk of developing insecure attachments to their parents by the end of the first year of life and looking more aggressive and disobedient sometime after 3 years of age.
While prolonged infant-mother separation can be detrimental to infant development, less clear are the effects of separation on toddlers and preschoolers.
In the Chicago study, we found that children who were in some kind of center program were more advanced in their intellectual development, their language skills, and their social development. At the same time, these same children tend to be less compliant if you give them a request or an order. They're more likely to say no. And they've also been observed to be more aggressive toward other children. So it's kind of this balance that they've got these positive, pro-social kinds of abilities, but at the same time they have some kind of antisocial, negative things. They're not going to learn social skills just by interacting with children in free play. The more time they spend just hanging around with other children in daycare, the worse their development is, not the better. So that the teachers actually need to make a deliberate effort to teach children the social skills.
A question we face continuously as we study development is there something special about a parent or a mother versus an alternative caregiver? Are there things that only mothers can provide? I think the answer to that question is no. That alternative caregivers can be everything a mother can be. But the key phrase is can be. Can grammatically means is physically able. That doesn't mean will, that is will do. And indeed, mothers have particular advantages. Mothers, after they have a baby through pregnancy, are hormonally primed to be responsive to that baby. It doesn't mean they'll realize or bring to fruition that hormonal priming, but it does mean they have potentially a step up. The real things that mothers have that give them an advantage are first, that their relationship with the baby will be enduring. It will last hopefully the child's lifetime and certainly the mother's lifetime. An alternative caregiver will not necessarily do that. And enduringness of relationships make a big difference. It plays a role in sort of the confidence and trust that a child can place that you will be here, that I can count on that. It's hard for an alternative caregiver to be that enduring person. The second thing that mothers have is they have a biological tie. This is my baby. This baby carries my seed, my genes. Biological organisms of all kinds, from one-celled organisms to multi-celled organisms, animals, plants, have strong investments in their progeny because of issues of extending the gene line and replication of the genes. Mothers are more concerned mostly with their kids than other people's kids. And that's true of all mothers and all fathers.
I hope that we're going to get some answers to the question of what daycare does to children and whether it's the best thing for them from doing this research we're doing. But I think even if we get answers, there are still going to be questions raised forever. Because I think that it's a natural part of being a parent to be concerned about what happens to your child. And if you're not there every minute watching it, you're going to be concerned about who else is taking care of the child and what they're doing. And so even if we find out from our research that children do just fine, I think that it's not a bad thing that parents will go on forever being a little on edge about it. And so they should be. Because even if they find wonderful child care, it's still up to them to keep monitoring it, to make sure that their child is getting the best treatment there that they can get.
Toddlers take their first bold steps into the larger world and continue the childhood struggle to become free, to become aware, to become attached to others. The sharply drawn tension between independence and the need for others is perhaps at the heart of social and emotional development during the toddler years.